It's very easy to attract a man in here, because even if you just stand and smile to someone, the man can already understand that, boom, there's a sign. I can come, I can ask for the number, I can even follow that girl. I can, like, she looked at me, she smiled at me. Oh my God, your eyes are beautiful. You're beautiful. Your dress, your hair, you're amazing. You're this, you're that. Don't be surprised if in 2 days or even until in the end of that date, you're going to hear that somebody's in love with you. Turkish men are well known for their control, for being jealous, and so on and so forth. And that's the other side of this type of behavior, because the man says this: when I treat you so well, when I give you everything that you kind of need, you don't need anyone else and anything else.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Dating Beyond Borders podcast. Today we have Anastasia, a Belarusian-born, Polish-raised blogger who now calls Turkey her home and is married to a Turkish man. We'll be discussing the trend of Eastern European women traveling to Turkey in search of a Turkish husband, a trend that, while less common now, still persists. We'll explore what they might be missing in their home countries and what to expect when in a relationship with a Turk. So welcome, Anastasia.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Marina. How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy to finally talk to you. We had some technical issues last time, so happy to redo it this time around. But let's just dive right into it. So I want to actually get your personal story of how you met your Turkish husband, because your story is unlike the other stories of Eastern European women who purposefully, go to Turkey and try to get a man. What was your story like?
Sounds pretty stereotypical Belarusian girl ending up with a Turkish man living in Turkey or in Turkey. But yes, our story actually started from the other end. We met in Kazakhstan, and that was after I already spent a couple of years in Turkey. So I spoke Turkish. I got a job somewhere in Istanbul, and after a couple of months, I was sent on a project which was set up first in Russia, but then in Kazakhstan. And I ended up with the other team on this Kazakh project. And one of the members of the team, we were like 4 people, was the person that I didn't even know that he was Turkish back then. He came from London, and we got introduced to each other. He was really serious and like very busy working on his computer. And I know it would sound like really crazy, but I'm just saying as it is, because on the second day, I knew he's going to be my husband. It was a super weird feeling. I had a boyfriend, by the way, back then, and he had a girlfriend. So that thought was just super weird. And we worked together. We worked very closely together. We lived together. That was the part of the project, the part of the job. We became really good friends. I found out that he's originally from Turkey, but he has lived all his life in the UK and was traveling for the past year for work. After a couple of months, 7 months or so, we just became together because we understood that we're kind of great match. We were great friends. And we had to, obviously we finished our previous relationships prior to that. And we kept it a secret only at work because this wasn't really something that was allowed. And we were sent on a project to a different country, already being a couple, but nobody knew apart from us. So it started completely sort of from the other end. And actually Turkey, as we call home for now, that came out also after so many other locations we lived in, because after Kazakhstan, we lived in Oman, then we moved to Dubai, to the UAE. From the UAE, we did move to Istanbul for a year, but then we quickly moved out of Turkey to go to China. From China, we moved to Ireland together. From Ireland, we went to Turkey. From Turkey to Italy. From Italy to Poland, I think. And after Poland, we finally decided to settle down, let's say, for now in Turkey. So yes, that's the story in short.
You're a very international couple. And I think it helped that he was also someone who has lived in the UK most of his life. He seems to have a very international mindset. But I have a question for you. When you say, I knew it was my husband, I've heard some people say this about people that they then go off to marry. And I always wonder, what is that feeling like to know that this is going to be my husband?
Frankly, I can't name anything but out of blue. It's literally, it comes from nowhere. It's just that, and I think there is this kind of an subconscious scanner back in your head, because when you see someone, the more you meet people around the world, the more you have some relationship with people, you do have experience, and that experience gives you certain filters. You do understand what you like, you do understand what you don't like, and you also do have a certain idea of how your future partner for the whole life would look like, right? And I think when this feeling comes, it's that you haven't realized it yet, but your brain already sends those subconscious signs of saying that is a perfect match. That is the person that you've been looking for. It is easy to sort of analyze right now, but back then when I tried to think about that feeling, it was so off. It was so not on point. I was like, brain, completely stop it, please, because that doesn't make any sense. And then with time, as it goes, you just realize that feeling, this is what I think we call sixth sense as well, somewhat, when we cannot explain something right at the point. But we should listen to the inner voices like this. I do believe that. Because, it's been more than 10 years. We've been married almost 5 years, and, it's going. An adventure is not finished. And I think, I see it as a lifelong adventure.
I think it's a really interesting point. I think there's been studies, and I've listened to some psychologists, and they said that you already know sometimes the reason you're going to break up with someone very, very quickly on in the relationship. You just choose to ignore it. And on the opposite scale, you have someone like you who says that maybe I'm not even sure if you were attracted to him, because you mentioned you were friends from the get-go. So it wasn't even like, oh, he's hot, we're going to get married. It was just like, this is going to happen.
Yeah, frankly, I think the last reason that would suggest somebody would be your husband is he's hot. I don't know. Every single time I thought someone is hot, it would never work out in the direction of a longer relationship. So I don't know. I feel like there are definitely other attributes. And yes, luckily enough, he's also very handsome, at least for me. But I don't think that's the... it's just not such an easy parallel to make. And I think every single thing that comes at first when you see someone, but something that is inside of you, it's just a little bit more difficult to extract. That's why it's very important to give yourself a chance with probably someone that is not at first your maybe first choice. Not that my husband wasn't. It's just that was a very different situation. But I'm just saying that sometimes people in our life come out and become a very strong bond when we don't even expect that. And that was definitely something I didn't expect, for sure.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think you're right. I think when we go off with the full on the feeling of attraction, oftentimes we can get super blinded by that. And it comes on really, really strong, right? And then it often dissipates. It's like, well, there was nothing else there, right? So obviously the relationship doesn't continue. And I feel like they talk a lot about it, is that there should be kind of a slow burn in a relationship. Like it shouldn't just be like boom, 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 fireworks right away. It should be kind of growing and getting better over time.
Absolutely agree. I think becoming friends is probably the best route, because in the end of the day, romantic relationship is, at least how I see it, is a different level. It's the level higher than a friend. The attraction towards a person who you want to be with as in a relationship is just a higher level of what the friend can be. And then friends is always something that can build a real bond, because all those expensive dates or beautiful dates or romantic moments, they may all evaporate at some point, but what you are going to stay with is your daily routine. And it doesn't matter whether 3 years pass, 5 years pass, 10 years pass. There will be a moment where you will just have to get on with this routine every day. And if you're not good at communicating just simple issues and being good at communication, as friends usually are, then I think chances are it will be just difficult to put this all together, because a relationship is not just, a pink fireworks and all the excitement. And of course it is that as well. But there are stages and you gotta sort of think long term.
Yeah. So let's talk about those cultural differences. Obviously, you're not a typical Eastern European girl. I would say very international. You've lived around the world. He's not a typical, I suppose, a Turkish guy, also has lived around the world. I don't know if you've seen that there's a map going around and they asked Europeans which cultures they were most attracted to. And most of the map just says Italy all over it. And then we have Turkey, and Turkey picks Russia. And I'm like, I know it wasn't the women that picked Russia. I know it was the men that picked Russia, right? So there's obviously like some attraction, you know, Eastern Europe to Turkey when it comes to women, Eastern European women and Turkish men. So how does your experience compare to like the typical stories of Eastern European women and meeting Turkish men?
Yeah, you said it rightly, in the sense that it's difficult for me to compare because, again, international environment has made me sort of a kind of a unique couple. But then, yes, we met also other couples that are very international and they met somewhere, but they're both from somewhere else. I do have a lot of friends, couples of Eastern European women dating or being married to Turkish men. And it is often the relationships and their immigration to one of each countries. Actually, it's usually a woman who is changing her location to the country, which is Turkey, rather than the other way around, even though I have few examples that are also the other way around. And it's usually women that are moving for men. But again, it's most probably their first immigration, most probably this person's first country that they've left, and they just sort of consider as home. One thing I have to say about, again, whatever I say in here is very stereotypical, but that's just how things work. Turkish people in general are very bound to their country, to the land, and to families. That means that a lot of people, even though they are willing to, let's say, travel or go somewhere, they're still very bonded to the country here. And I know a lot of couples where they came here, they even have the means to maybe even travel or go live somewhere else, but they just wouldn't prefer to. They want to stay here. They want to stay in Turkey. They want to live in Turkey. They have their own family. And the Eastern European girl becomes just part of that family. They travel for holidays around. They go travel around Turkey for some resorts and so on, and some other places of interest. But they wouldn't go abroad, for example. It's just... I would say Turkey is becoming like their permanent point of residence.
Hey guys, I just wanted to take a second to thank you all for tuning into this podcast. These podcasts take so much work, so any of your support is much appreciated. If you have a second, please go and give it a follow and a 5 stars if you really enjoyed it. Now, back to the episode. So what is it that you think draws Eastern European women to Turkish men?
I can't say it's not. It is the looks. It is because, you have the first impression, and the first impression is always how the person looks, right? And it is that. I always live through the shock. Even me, I go back to Poland because that's the country I reside in for the past 20 years. It's been my home. When I go back to Poland, what strikes me the most is the amount of blonde people. I'm like, oh my God, everybody has like light hair. This is crazy. Because in Turkey, everywhere I look, everyone has dark hair, dark features. Actually, I would just take pictures and portraits of people because they have really ancient features. Like I can see how big noses, eyebrows and everything. It's so fascinating. And then when I go to Eastern Europe, those features are delicate. They are more fragile, and it just looks very different. So I think even for me, I mean, I live here on and off, and for someone who is always here suddenly sees a girl that is purely blonde, you can always differentiate a pure blonde or light haired person from the one that has been dyeing their hair, right? And then vice versa. There's a lot of memes and jokes going around the internet, like, why do I go to Turkey for? And then you just sort of talk about this desserts, which just means man. But it's true. I mean, again, this sort of a very macho look, also the one that Italians in Spanish are known for and are attracting. Again, something different, because when we look at men in Eastern Europe, they, again, not very bright features, a sort of a very plain look, let's put it that way. And here you come, and I don't know, just the average guy who's cutting kebab sometimes has, his eyes and his face. You're just like, oh my God, so handsome. I even look sometimes, but from the point of photographing view, like, wow, that would be a great portrait. That would be such a full of, texture, let's put it that way, face. If you're a single woman, then I can understand it, how attractive that is. That's one part, for sure. If we go into more serious thing, I would say that definitely what I noticed is the Turksmen are very family-oriented. Family and family creation and kids, and in general, spending time with kids, spending time in the family is something that they live for, something that they love. They love kids. And in general, the society is sort of carved for kids. You go to a restaurant with a kid, I don't know, 2 months old, 3 months old, doesn't matter. The waiter just picks up the kid and goes around just to entertain the kid. Like, that's crazy. In Poland, this would never happen. You would never give your kid to someone you don't know. But this in here is very common. Something else, of course, the amount of things you're going to hear. I mean, it's very easy to attract a man in here, because even if you just stand and smile to someone, the man can already understand that, boom, there's a sign. I can come, I can ask for the number. I can even follow that girl. I can, she looked at me, she smiled at me. This happened to me when I first came to Istanbul in 2011. I came for an internship, and my usual phase of extrovert girl that's just visiting the city of her dreams. And I would just look at everything and smile. And I had lenses back then that were like super green. So my green eyes were more or less like my dress. And people would just stare at me, and I would stare back and smile. And the amount of people that just followed me, and they were like, oh, hello, привет, как дела? And I was like, oh my God, what's going on? Why people talk to me like this? And then I realized that straight stare into somebody's eyes and a smile is an invitation to more than just a smile back. And that's, for example, something that if you smile in Italy, if you smile in Spain, if you stare at someone straight, you would receive the same treatment back. But it doesn't matter, that it doesn't necessarily mean that someone would come and chat to you, give you his phone number, and so on and so forth. That's why right now when I go around the street, first of all, I never stare like that directly, unless I'm angry and I want to stare to show someone that I don't want that person to approach me or something. But as the point of kindness, you just try to be a little bit less direct in terms of your side.
Is it because that Turkish women typically don't look men straight in the eye? Is there anything in terms of that in the culture?
I think they do. It's just when a Turkish girl looks in the eye, it's one thing. When a foreigner looks in the eye, is the other. Because the foreigner is that it's not the forbidden fruit. It's just out there. You can go and grab it, sort of. I mean, I know it sounds bad, but that's just how it is. With a Turkish girl, you may understand this. She may have a brother. She may have another boyfriend. If she had another boyfriend, she probably wouldn't stare, but she may have a brother. And the brother is something that is a very important figure in here, because brothers in Eastern Europe would not mess around with the sisters, whatever she's doing. But in here, the brother is sort of a protector. He needs to know who is messing up with my sister, so I can be the person who tells him, whoa, you got to behave a certain way. So it's a bit more careful. You never know whose daughter it is. You never know certain things. But again, it depends. If you are in such a big city like Izmir or Istanbul, and you are somewhere in Bağdat, say, which is one of the most liberal and party streets, not party streets, but again, there's a lot of restaurants and places where people hang out. You will see all sorts of things that when I talk about them, you wouldn't even know how to apply them because they're not there. But I'm just talking a little bit wider on some districts where maybe tourists don't go so often, or cities outside of Istanbul as well. Because I did travel around Turkey quite a lot. And you can see how different it is from anonymous Istanbul, where any behavior is okay, depending on the district. So yeah, again, attraction is definitely sweet words and their approach. It's very difficult to attract a man. They come to you, they actually approach you themselves because they see that you're from somewhere else. I'm not talking about myself now because people actually think I'm sort of local, so nobody approaches me much, thankfully. But when I see, when sometimes my friends visit me, let's say blonde girl, then that is, I always tell them, I just like, just be prepared for the amount of attention you're going to get. And they're surprised. And then let's say you agreed for a date. Let's say you agreed to drink coffee with a person. That is the romantic ambience, the romantic atmosphere that is going to surround you. Oh my God, your eyes are beautiful. You're beautiful. Your dress, your hair, you're amazing. You're this, you're that. Don't be surprised if in 2 days or even until in the end of that date, you're going to hear that somebody's in love with you. Poof, easy. So, something that in Eastern Europe and I notice Western Europe even more, the word I love you, that phrase, to hear this, you got to sometimes work years. You're not going to hear it. The amount of times I hear seni seviyorum, gözlerin çok güzel, çok güzel. Like those compliments just fly left, right, and center. And yes, of course, it may not be true until the end. Somebody cannot be in love straight up. But even hearing that after you haven't heard it for a long time, after a man is just like super reserved, and I don't know, I am sort of sensing, and I've heard, I don't know if it's true because I haven't lived in Belarus for the past 22 years, but I've heard that girls need to do a lot to attract men attention. But in Turkey, it's the other way around. You don't even need to have makeup on and have some clothes on. Just be yourself, walk around the street, and you're going to find someone to talk to.
Asa, you raised so many wonderful points. I think number one is that women in Eastern Europe, and I can say in Western Europe, are starved for attention, romance, for beautiful words, for compliments, this big strive for equality that, we have. We want to feel equal, but we also want to feel wanted and needed and seen. And I think Turkish men know how to bring romance. Obviously, Turkish soap operas show that very well. There's a clip that I've seen of a woman walking in the door, and it's all these different, series that they show where the man sees her walk in and she looks really beautiful. And it's very, very Turkish. It's this beautiful man, it's this beautiful woman, and the woman comes in and the man just, he like stares at her and he just like takes her in, he drinks her in. And it's what we all want as women, right? We want this beautiful romance. Yeah. So obviously there is, and what you said is absolutely correct. I think it's Eastern European men as well. I feel like they're also, a bit spoiled in terms of, just the amount of beautiful women accessible to them. Right. So they don't have to put in any effort as well. And, they're not as obviously complimentary either. So, what do you think about this?
Yeah. I do feel like it is, speaking of the global terms, it's this stuck position between being spoiled and touching upon this feminism that we see in Western societies, where the woman, she doesn't want to be treated as a woman. She wants to be treated just a woman and a man on the same level. She doesn't want to be treated as, if you open the door for someone, she may tell you, whoa, what are you doing? I can open the door for myself. So those type of behavior, they kind of clapped back on men not doing those things just out of courtesy because they would like to show their attention to a woman. And again, it's kind of a tricky situation, right? Because how are you going to be charming? How are you going to be romantic in that sense if even commenting on someone else's looks may be considered as something not very correct? Of course, to avoid such situations, it's just better to erase them all. And we receive the whole desert of desire from the female, because we're still the same women. We love it. We love the nice word, right? So what's wrong with that? But that's the I think the tricky situation. And then yes, moving a little bit towards Eastern Europe is where women are extremely self-conscious about their beauty. They constantly try to come up with new ways how to just enhance the looks and so on and so forth. And that doesn't really work. It's a difficult situation. And I feel like on that level, definitely this meets somewhat here in Turkey, where men do not absolutely hold themselves back with the compliments, with the words, with the gestures as well. Because it doesn't matter how wealthy the guy is, the payment for everything, the inviting, the picking up with the car, these all things, they're here. And again, even sometimes I feel the stories, oh, he offered to pick me up, but what am I can't go to the date myself. I'll just go myself. It's fine. I can do it. But that's not about this. It's just about also allowing the other person to show you, to take care of you for a little bit. This can be balanced. But yeah, it's a tricky game, in the sense that you got to balance it. But at the same time, this can also clap back on you, where, we do know about the stories where Turkish men are well known for their control, for being jealous, and so on and so forth. And that's the other side of this type of behavior, because the man says this: when I treat you so well, when I give you everything that you kind of need, you don't need anyone else and anything else. So why would you have male friends? Why would you talk to them? Why would you chat to them? Why would you go meet them? You don't need this. And that's where the challenge is coming, I guess.
Yeah. I would love to backtrack and talk about the fact that you said that they say I love you really early on in the relationship. Yeah. But a lot of women listening to this podcast will say, well, I don't believe that. If someone says I love you 2 days into the relationship, it means nothing. Obviously, because this person doesn't know me. It's all coming from passion, attraction. Like there's nothing else there. And so a lot of people will say, you know what, I would rather wait half a year for someone to actually genuinely consider it and say it to my face. And then of course we have Western European men, where oftentimes the extreme opposite, let's say German men or Swedish men, that, as you said, it can take them a year to say, I love you. And at this point, they've considered every single element of your relationship. They've weighed the pros and the cons. They've rationalized the relationship. They're like, do I see myself long-term with this person? Is it, are they like this? Are they my equal partner? Can they take care of themselves? Are they smart? Are they this? Is this? And then they say, I love you, right? So again, it's two very, very, very contrasting things, right? But again, 2 days into the relationship, can you trust that? That's the question.
No, I think absolutely not. No. But then again, this is like the game, the love game is difficult. It is always what you are willing to compromise, and how much, the beginning is the beginning. This is when someone says, I love you straight away, that may just mean as well, and you got to be able to read it, that I really like you. It's a great time spending with you. So he could have said that, but he's just saying, I love you because that's just normal. Everybody says this. It's being said, it's being told to everyone around. Why not using it to the girl that just really loves? She's beautiful. I just want to tell her how I love her, so that, this makes a better impression on all of this, rather than saying, I really like spending time with you. But now everything needs to be taken with a pinch of salt. And I feel like there's a lot of situations. I actually recently received this type of message from one of the acquaintances I haven't spoken for ages. And she told me, can you tell me about this town in Turkey? I'm moving there for marriage. I'm just getting married to this guy. Can you tell me something about this town? And I'm like, wow, I mean, you're moving there. You don't even know how the place looks. I mean, that's a little bit brave. I had to Google the town. I didn't even know it wasn't a city or anything like this. I had to Google the town, and I thought I know Turkish map pretty well. But then obviously it's a huge country, so I can't know every single town out there. So I Googled the town, and it's next to places I know pretty well. So I try to sort of portray how that can be. But my question is this. Do we try to ask ourselves how much we're able to compromise? I mean, I always say, without trying, so words is one thing, but without actually seeing certain gestures, as you said, the Swedish or German man may not tell you straight away he loves you, but he may show you with his gesture, with his actions, that love. And this is why you're together, because yes, you may not judge by the words because that person does not prefer to say those words, but the actions show you a certain picture. And this is where you need to dig in here. Words are nice. It's all great, especially in the beginning. Butterflies in the stomach. Oh, great. But when you come to your senses a little bit more in depth, you think about that relationship, let's say, then of course you got to judge by the actions. If you've never seen this person's family, if you've never met anyone of his friends, of his relatives or brothers and sisters, if you have never been to his hometown and he talks about it and you're going to live there when you get married, all those places and all those people, that they need to be sort of double checked as well. You got to meet these people. You got to see how they communicate. You got to have a scan. You can't just say, oh my God, I heard he loves me, so let me just pack my bag and I'm moving there. So I would, of course, always urge to enjoy the game of love in Turkey. But if you are thinking about something serious, then of course there are much more to it than just hearing that someone is in love with you and he can do anything for you. Let's just see how much he can do first.
Exactly. Yeah, you raise so many wonderful points. And I think you're absolutely right. Right. We have two extremes. And I would rather see the actions than hear the words myself. Of course, it's important to hear some words, because if someone says nothing about, how they feel about you, it's also can be a little bit dull and lack that kind of fire. And
it has to go together.
Exactly. And I wonder if it's also this what came first? I was asked this question when it comes to Turkish soap operas, for example. What came first? Was it the Turkish soap operas and then the men were like, oh, I have to emulate that. I have to be just like this. Or is it this Turkish culture that gave rise to the Turkish soap operas? I always wonder.
No, I would definitely say it's the second one. I would definitely say the behavior, the culture, the way how it developed from sort of a very conservative in the past and then slowly liberating and getting a lot from the Western culture and then sort of tracking back on the conservative values, on Islam, on the respect towards women and so on and so forth. So all of this and a very unique history and culture that kind of intertwined together, that just what is the outcome of all of this. Because when we think about how they communicate with the woman, I think I had a conversation recently with someone about this, about the Quran and how a woman is portrayed in the Quran. And then the fact that a woman in the Quran, somebody was explaining to me his understanding of the Quran. It's like the woman is the highest value. The fact why the man has to give all the money to the woman is because she knows better, because she is the highest value person. And the fact we are opening the door or giving her the seat or taking care of her is because we value a woman as the highest thing out there. I don't know if it's true. I haven't checked Quran from that point of view, but I'm just saying that there are certain quite conservative values that have sort of developed into what we can see right now in those series. And I mean, all those soap operas with the intrigue and romanticism and drama and everything. It obviously not to this staged extent, but it happens in a family. I mean, Turkish families are full of drama. The way they talk to each other, this whole word thing. I feel like being worthy is very important in Turkey. They may tell you they love you straight away, but then also be prepared. And this is, so I remember this one particular situation, which, for example, finished because of Turkish people being so worthy, because it goes positive and negative way, right? When you hear that somebody loves you and he'll move mountains for you and so on and so forth, what happens when you quarrel? You hear the other side of the story. I don't want to see you anymore. You're the worst person in the world. Go get out of my sight. Pack your stuff, leave, whatever, go back to your country, so on and so forth. And for some people, those word roller coasters and emotional, because it also influences your emotions, right? You hear you're loved, and then the next day what you hear is that you're the worst person ever and you're never going to be seen. So that, that plays with your emotions if you're not aware of that it's just words. Sometimes, obviously, it all depends, but I'm just trying to show you the picture. You're going to be prepared for this. I know the very good relationship that finished exactly that way because the girl was like, I can't stand what he tells me when we quarrel. And I was like, those are words. You just have to accept that this person just feels like he needs to say this, but he doesn't mean it. But for some people, it's unacceptable to hear, the good things. It's acceptable because these are positive things, but the negative things are completely something that they can't put up with.
Yeah, that's why I love talking about culture, because people always take passion as a kind of positive thing in a relationship. Oh, this person's so passionate. They're so big with their words. They're so exaggerated, right? You have to remember as well, the exaggeration is going to come into play when you're going to have an argument, as you said, right?
Yep.
So while we can have some cultures that are more restrained when it comes to emotion, but they're also as equally restrained when it comes to arguments. They're not going to say anything that they don't mean in the spur of the moment, and the heat of the moment, in the emotional state that they're in. They're not as reactive. Whereas other cultures can be very, very reactive. And I'm a pretty reactive person as well. And I know I can say sometimes things that I don't mean in an argument, which if I had a boyfriend that did the same, I don't know how that would end, right? Like, you need someone who can kind of be like, okay, pace themselves, tone it down.
Exactly. Otherwise, it's going to be, two exploding things, and then what are you going to do about this? It's a very difficult you that's what I'm saying. You gotta do the balance and see how much compromise and what type of your personality is. That's why it's very important who you meet, because obviously there are introverts in Turkey as well, and they don't really like to express their emotions like this. But it just depends on who you meet and how you can match, because I think above all, this is what's important. Matching of certain personalities, of your values and priorities. And if that can happen, then obviously the relationship can be successful, but that can only be verified with time. So again, I urge everyone who is going to come to Turkey for a very nice and good time to just think in the long term. Everything long term requires certain effort, and that effort means time first and foremost.
Can I ask you personally, your husband, when did he say I love you to you? How soon was it in the relationship?
Oh, that was super quick. And I hear it every day, at least 10 times. So that's it. It's very, this is something that has been always there. There is no day without a compliment, no day without saying something nice to me. There is no day like that. Every single day, I either wake up something like this, or he just doesn't. But that's just the way he is as well. It's very important for him to be able to express it, right? So instead of just being silent, and also we're both extroverts, and you can imagine how that works. And actually, it's also very interesting how I got tempered a little bit with my sort of constant need of talking. I actually had a couple of years back even the problem of I was losing voice every single week because I was talking so much. And I think that God sent me my husband just for him to talk more, so I can kind of shut up a little bit, because my voice wasn't making it there. And it's very quick. I can totally relate to. I used to lose my voice all the time. I'm a talker as well, and I used to be a teacher. So I used to lose my voice every weekend. But it's interesting that he says it to you all the time. How does that make you feel? I mean, Eastern Europeans were maybe a little bit more reserved overall, although it depends on your personality. And does that ever feel like it's too much, or are you just kind of like, now it's a part of the relationship, or did it ever feel like it was too much? I always felt like this is kind of how he is. And also my mom, for example, she does similar things to me. Our relationship is like Eastern European relationship, just like a common one between a daughter and a mother, is probably the first that comes to your mind is a little bit cold and distant. And I didn't have that at all. My mom is a very expressive person. She constantly tells me some nice things and some, oh, you're my son. Oh, you're my this. So it's very Turkish in that sense. Yeah. So when I have a husband who tells me all these things, this just feels so normal, because my mom uses it and she was using it all the time. And this is what he does right now. And I can see him communicating like this to his sister, for example. So it's just, I just knew that that's just how he is.
Yeah, no, I can totally relate. My mom and I were very similar that way. We always like to say we're Italians because we're very expressive, very reactive, very vocal. And I've always dated men that were not really huge on that. And so I can understand that once you have that, it can be really hard to go to something different, right? Because you're used to the vocality to
Exactly.
to someone lifting you up and making you feel special. And I think it's important in a relationship. When I see couples, a lot of Western European couples, when I see them in their like 60s or 70s, I see them on vacation a lot. And you really can tell that they're just partners for life, but there's no emotion a lot of times left there.
Yeah.
They're just sitting there kind of staring past each other. And I never wanted that to be my future. And I've had a conversation about this with someone, but like, it should start off on a high. At least you should have this, you know, if you're already not saying anything to each other and it's like your first few years of a relationship, then what are you going to do in your 60s when, you know, you're out?
Are you going to start saying it when you're 16?
Exactly.
Probably not.
Probably not. And I think it's important. And I think it's important. I don't want to generalize all Eastern European women. Actually, I will, because I do think for Eastern European women, it's very important. And I think that's why we have more of a gravitational pull from Eastern Europe versus, let's say, Western Europe. You know, women, they're a little bit more independent. They still need romance, but not to the extent that Eastern European women need romance. Like, it's just, you see Eastern European women gravitate towards Southern men a lot, whether it's like Middle Eastern guys, Turkish guys, Latinos, Italians, whoever can bring that element of romance and beauty and gender roles, who can pay is a big one. That's where, you know, that's the pull. I don't think you see a lot of like Eastern European women traveling to, let's say, Sweden to find a man. That almost never happens, right?
I felt like it was, there were some difficult times in the past where people would, Eastern European in 90s, 80s, it was sort of going abroad for the marriage was something sort of a dream because of what was happening inside the country, because of what was happening around them. There was no man, everybody would be either a bandit or a drunkard or so on and so forth. But times changed drastically right now. And obviously the expectations are completely different. And then, of course, people are looking for hotness in any sense. I mean, it's, again, if you're coming from a cold country, you're most probably moving and would prefer to move to also somewhere where it's hot. Not only you're getting hot man, but you're also getting a hot climate. I mean, what's wrong about that?
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the challenges of being in a relationship with a Turkish man. Obviously not from your experience, but maybe you have some experiences of your girlfriends. I've heard that cheating can be quite a big thing. Not sure how true that is, but talk to me about that.
Yeah. So I've heard it myself as well. The part which is cheating, and I don't know examples around me, but I have heard that this is a thing. I also used to teach Turkish students, and some of my students were telling me some of their private stories. Again, very normal thing in Turkey to just share private stuff with people unrelated to the topic. So there is something like this. And moreover, again, coming back to what I was saying earlier about family orientation, right? So this family orientation has the other side. Even when the cheating is happening, it doesn't really necessarily mean that the relationship will be over. And very often the other part knows about that cheating going on, but the relationship is still continuing for the sake of keeping the family. Because how it looks from the outside that you're still an item, even though it's rotten inside, is more important than taking that burden on yourself, getting a divorce, and having that divorced in your documents and everybody knowing that you're divorced, which is, again, quite a different perspective of an Eastern European woman. What I feel like for them, throwing a paper because of something that the man did, for example, cheating, is very easy. If the cheating has taken place, then boom, divorce, and off you go. Now, it's not that easy in here. And again, this is not really related that much to the religion as to the culture, where in a society, it's better to keep the face of your family, your unit, especially when you have kids. The other challenge, I think, again, not really related to me, it's the family ties. While it can be really nice to have family vacation and some guests over, I do know the stories where guests may just come your door without even warning you. So cousins of a cousin of a cousin just comes to your door because they know where you live. They just come to visit your husband, right? You, obviously. And they come, they stay. a day, 2, a week, a month. You don't have a sort of a cultural right to ask them when they are leaving. Obviously, this can be the base for certain arguments with the husband, trying to hint to him that, hey, what the hell? I mean, your family has been here for so long. When are they planning to leave? And he may say, well, but I see them very rarely, let them stay longer, so on and so forth. So those family ties can be a bit challenging to manage because you got to establish certain barriers, certain borders, and this can be difficult because you just don't expect something like this, right? So in Eastern Europe, when someone is coming, they're first of all going to ask you if the term is suitable or so, and they're probably going to tell you how long they're planning to stay. So that does not happen always in here. And then again, every holiday in Turkey kind of means that you're spending it with the family. I have a friend that I've been talking to in relation to this podcast. And I asked her, I said, Demiana, can you tell me about your challenges? I mean, what are your challenges? I don't know any. And she said, listen, it's all fine, but you gotta know how to handle the mother. She said. And again, this is another topic, the mother-son relationship. And this is also, I think, relevant to Italy and to Spain, where we know how strong of a relationship, how all the raviolis are the best only with the mother and how your ravioli will always suck. It's very similar here. Mante will always be better and menemen will always be better. Again, depends, but in general, and mother is always right. She will always tell you what to do. I have a friend whose dress, hair, and makeup was chosen for her. She had to wear the dress that the mother chose and the hairstyle that the mother chose, not the one that she wanted for her wedding. So she has wedding photos in pretty much amplitude that she didn't even choose. But that was the mother's request. And she obeyed because she's like, okay, it doesn't really matter for me, whatever. And that's fine. She had to establish with her husband some other boundaries later on. But, those are some sort of a compromises that you need to lead through. So yeah, holidays with the family, sometimes too many and too much. But that's why it's good to maybe live in a different place or at least separately. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was in Turkey with my mom never wants to be called mom or she doesn't want to feel old. And the Turkish man, with the respect, they would call her Anne, right? And they'd be like, mama to her. And she was like, why? I don't want them to keep doing that. That's just super annoying. But for them, it was just the ultimate sign of respect.
Yes. Right. Yes. I think that's also how some of the cultural differences that we have to be aware of. Sometimes they're not, the names that we're being called is not being called because we want to be feeling old or so. It's out of respect. And this is a very good example because I asked one of my friends recently, I said, oh, you've been to Turkey. How was it? She's like, it was fine, but we didn't really enjoy it that much with my mom. And I was like, what was the reason? And she said, we were there all together and we were renting this really nice apartment. But the owner of the apartment was only talking to my father, never to us. And I was like, okay. And she's like, it was very disrespectful. And I was like, right. But, maybe he was talking, and that's what happens as well. The man is talking to the man, specifically outing the women, just to show the man how much he respects his women, not to talk to them directly. And I know this sounds a little bit weird, but these are the little things in here that are noticeable. And for some people, they may seem like, oh my God, they don't talk to me. They talk to him. What is this? I'm here. But that is out of the respect. So that your father never suspects this man to ever have anything to do with the two women. They will never be in the same room, let's say closed room, even talking about very important, serious things. That would not happen, just not to raise the suspicion. And I think this is what I realized when I live here a longer time. Sometimes there is just no need to put yourself into a double meaning situation. You can just at first not find yourself in this situation. And I feel like in the West, as they say, we put ourselves around many those double meaning situations. They're like, but nothing happened. I was just sleeping next to him. Nothing happened. Why in the first place put yourself in this position? So this is kind of from the same story.
Yeah. Yeah. Turkey's interesting. Again, when I was there with my mom thrived in Turkey. She loved the Grand Bazaar. She loved bargaining.
Wow.
My mom seemed to kind of, she like really drank it in. They would have these conversations where she would be purchasing something and the guy selling her the necklace would say, oh, I wouldn't do this, but for your eyes or for this, I would give a discount. And she would say, but could you also give me something for free? Because, and they would kind of have this dance and I don't know how to do this dance. And I also noticed that, of course, like if you're going to buy something in Turkey, a lot of times I went into the store to buy a bag. He said, what? Before you buy a bag, let's sit down, have some tea. We can talk. Let me show you Istanbul. And I wasn't sure if he was hitting on me, if he was trying to make a sale. I wasn't sure what was happening, but
everything.
Both. They're very, very, very good business people and they're very smooth with their words. And for me, it was really hard because I'm pretty direct and I didn't know what to trust and I didn't know what was just words, right?
Yeah. I completely understand this. They are known for having a history of being great traders. The Silk Way, they go through here and so on and so forth. They have thousands of history of doing this, and they're doing it really well. And we can see it up until today. I mean, this is beautiful. And I don't really like Grand Bazaar because of the amount of people, but I always, when I take friends around there or I have someone to take around, I'm just always amazed. And even though I've been living here for on and off since 2011, so that's been 14 years almost, it always charms me. It always charms me how effortless this all happens. And then you got to remember, you got to play the game. It's a nice game. You got to relax. You got to just try to enjoy it a little bit more. I feel like we became so serious, and especially now in our daily task, in our being serious, being direct, being very sort of to the point. We don't want to waste anybody's time. We don't want to get very emotional. We want to get emotional with our therapist only. But then in here, you can just let it be. And, I always say, try to enjoy for what it is with an open mind. Grand Bazaar is anything there you can find that will just take your mind away, whether it's the amount of people or the amount of things you're going to see or the colors or the way, the amount of languages people are going to try to speak to you. To just make sure that you look at them. Because sometimes I feel like they're polyglots, but then I find out they speak like 5 words of each language. And
that's very true. It's, I think you raised such a wonderful point that a lot of times we're very to the point, we're very efficient in the West. And how have you found that Turkish communication differs in that sense?
I just felt so good when I came here. I have to be honest. I was 23, super young, just straight out of uni. I got this internship after I was actually going with the car to Georgia, where I stayed for like 3 weeks. And I crossed Istanbul, and this was the first time I saw it. And on the way back from Georgia, again by car, we stopped for 8 hours, I think, in Istanbul to meet my friend that I met back in Poland in the dormitory, and he took us around. And what I saw in these 8 hours, this energy, all this, authenticity that I have, we're kind of missing in the West as well. The guy that's cleaning the shul, these guys that have been selling his baklava for the past 1,000 years, God knows what else. I just got drawn with this energy. And as I said, I'm a very extroverted person. I love small talks. I really like the whole sort of buzz around all the time. So in that sense, when I got the internship and I went to Istanbul, I was just even now, I mean, a lot of things bug me in Istanbul. It also bug me in Turkey, but that element of constant, as they say, hayat var, so this life, is something that it's difficult for me to find somewhere else. I see it in Italy as well. Again, a bit smaller extent and depending where. I see it in Spain, and I love it. It wasn't ever the relationship where I was first shocked. It took me a while to get used to. It was never like this. I was just like SpongeBob. I was like, oh my God, this is me. This is perfect. Like, this is exactly for me. And it's been like this ever since. I've been traveling around, but always somewhat all the roads were coming back to here. And I think I know why. It's just sometimes when you find a match, there is no perfect place for sure, but there is a place that definitely draws you more than others. And if you have a chance, and you always have a chance, you should You should be where the heart is, I guess.
Yeah, that's perfectly put. I do think that I talk a lot about this, but I do think different places bring out different personality in us, and also they fit us differently. And you always feel on some energetic level if the place is a misfit. Like if you just feel like, oh, it, may work for other people, but I don't feel myself here. And some people thrive in chaos. Some people really love colder, like more rational places. A lot of times people that come from very loud and crazy places, they gravitate towards very, very quiet places. Sometimes I was on a plane and I met this woman and she was like, oh, I'm from the Caribbean, but I'm going to Finland because I really love Finland. And I think it's one of the most beautiful, amazing places. And I could not understand it. Sorry, anyone who's watching this, if they're Finnish or Nordic, but because it doesn't fit my personality. I'm like, I would be so deadly bored and so restrained there. Yeah. It does not fit me at all, right? But it fit her perfectly well. And that means that there is a place for everybody, right? Whether it's like Finland or Sri Lanka or Turkey or Japan, whatever, we all find our place. But have you noticed any changes in your own cultural identity since being in a relationship with a Turkish man, a very international Turkish man, or just living in Turkey?
I think I'm amazed how my husband is able to keep this honesty in him throughout. He definitely combines those both features of like, yes, international, but he's Turkish first. And keeping the word honesty and sort of being like honest with himself, and sometimes even too much, I feel like. But I appreciate this a lot. I think like those are great features to have. And in general, I really like how here people just enjoy the moment. And despite huge inflation, 300%, this, that, so many different limitations, travel limitations as well. Nobody talks about how difficult it is for Turkish people to get a Schengen visa, for example, to go abroad, how they introduce a new tax for Turkish people to even pay the government because they leave the country to go abroad. So many different issues. But despite all of this, they always find a second to just say, kahve keyfi. Like, I'm just sitting, drinking my coffee, pleasure moment. That's it. I don't know, food, this, that. They just always seem to enjoy regardless. And this has a quite drastic effect on the economy as well, because they spend like there's no tomorrow. If you come to Turkey, you will see that it doesn't matter that the inflation is on. People are full in restaurants, they're full in cafes, people are out and about, and you're like, whoa, I've heard inflation is crazy, I've told the price increase. True. Everybody's living on their credit card and they love it because they need to enjoy the daily portion of pleasure. You may say this is irresponsible. You may say this is not something long term. Yes, but who cares about long term when you have today? And again, Damiana, a friend of mine, she said since her relationship, she said she just feels more relaxed and she approaches many things with just inshallah. Inshallah, I was like, okay, will happen. Just like hallederiz, as they say in Turkish, hallederiz, which means we will manage somehow. And I wish everyone a little bit of hallederiz in our life, because sometimes it just gets too much.
No, I can totally relate to what you're saying, especially, now being in Spain. Spain is another one of those countries where people genuinely take the time to just hang out with people, be social. Like come evening time, if it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it doesn't matter. People are out on the street walking and sitting in restaurants. I'm like, where do they get the money? And my friend said, well, they don't have the money. They just prioritize today. That's exactly what you're talking about, right? And it's so sad how, in Western Europe, like in countries like, again, we have Germany, the Netherlands, Scandinavia, Canada, US. Yeah, sure, there's more of a work-life balance in, like, let's say, Western Europe than there is in North America, for sure. A lot more holidays and things like that. But people still, they don't go out. They don't go out and enjoy the having dinner with their friends. Like everything happens indoors, obviously because of the weather, but also because of priorities. Yeah, sure. People complain a lot about, and they make so much money, right? They have it all, but they're always complaining.
Yeah, so we have more, but we enjoy less.
Exactly. So I just think, I don't know if, people here have things figured out, people here in the South, people in Turkey, people in Greece or whatever, but I think we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So why not enjoy today? Like, what are we planning for, right? Are we waiting until retirement? Is that the goal? Because we don't know what kind of health problems we're going to have then, you know?
I mean, again, people work really hard for, having their sort of time where they can relax. And again, it's not like I'm just lying down in here doing nothing and just enjoying the thing. My husband works really, really hard as well for us. I work not as hard as him, but still to just make sure that we have that moment. But the balance and the idea that you see people around that know how to enjoy their time, even if there are no means, this is something that I want to see. Because if I work hard, like when we lived in Poland, my husband worked as hard, but when we were getting out on the street to just get some energy and just kind of get some recharge to go back to work, there was nobody in winter. And I get it. The weather is horrible. I get it. But there is no one. The weather is bad. We had some nice views because we lived in a very nice area in Tri-City. So we had Baltic Sea right there. So we were looking at nature and feeling energized. But in terms of energy with people, you got to create energy yourself. It's not it's not being getting back to you. But then in Turkey, I feel like if I have a low day, I'll get out and there will be someone or something that will energize me. And that is a lot, I guess. That's something that I need.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. This is how I want to live my life as well. Any advice for anyone that is moving to Turkey or is wanting to date a Turkish man? Obviously, you've given a lot of great advices along the way, but just like a final note for women or for people to know.
They say in Turkey, I don't really like that saying, but it may give some food for thought. Evlenecek kız var, evlenecek kız var. Not very good one, but again, it means there is a girl for party and the girl for marriage. Don't like it, but what I mean by this is there is time for marriage and there is time for fun. And there is also time. You need to give things time. If you want to enjoy things and enjoy your holiday and meet someone and just have nice conversation and flirt, do it. But just, be honest with yourself and with the other person, what you're doing. If you want to get married and you want to find something, that takes time. Go through your values, think about your priorities, talk about things, get to know each other, become friends. And only then think about something more serious. So there is no really rocket science in it. It's just about time for anything, and don't be rushed into things, because the beauty of the start and the beauty of the finish can they may be very close apart. So enjoy, but be careful.
Thank you so much, Asya. Thank you for taking part in the podcast. It was fascinating to listening to because, first of all, I never talk about Turkey. This is the first episode where we focus on Eastern Europe and on Turkey. So it was really, really interesting for me to listen to you. And you just have a way of kind of getting your message across in such an energetic and fun way that people are really going to enjoy this podcast, I'm sure. Guys, let us know what you thought about it. Yeah, let us know if you have any questions for Asya, if you wanted to ask her any questions about life in Turkey. And maybe she'll check in once in a while. I'm also going to link to all her socials so you can go and message her directly. And Asya, thank you so much again.
Thank you very much. Teşekkürler. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Marina.
Bye.
It was a pleasure.
Bye.